What's going on, YouTube? It says we're live. There's always a lag. I don't know. But we are all very, very blessed to have Smart Silver Stacker with us, an icon in the community, a brilliant guy. He's been doing a lot of live streams lately. I think he's really digging those. I've been watching this guy for years, and I actually went back and watched his first video from, what, 6 years-ish ago, I think, the other day. Wolverine, what's up? Let me do a quick roll call, and then I will... Hey, y'all came for him, not me. What's up, Niels? My buddy, OTG, Buckeye. We got Chef Stacker LA. What's up, Chefy? Chef's a good dude. We got Two Bros Stacking. We got Orlando Prepper. We got Silverchair. Snakebite. What's up, brother Snake? Silverchair actually started his channel because I inspired him, which makes me feel good. So keep at it, Silverchair. Thule sent me a really good motivational video you did the other day. Dude, that was fire. Keep it up. Do not stop. William, what's up? I review Silver Wolverine. That's a heavy hitter. JK, West Texas. What's up, everybody? Let's welcome Smart Silver Stacker. Gold Chick, how you doing? What's up, brother?
Hey, man. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here. Great to be on the live stream with you.
I'm honored. Actually, I got to tell you guys a story. I think you sent me an email back in August, and it went to the bottom under everything else, and I didn't see it for like over a month, and I was like, oh no, the guy wants to do a live stream. He probably thinks I left him off. So pay attention to your Gmail, folks. That's all I can say.
Yeah, well, it can be tough to coordinate things sometimes, but I'm glad that we finally put this together. Hey, everybody there in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on the chat as well, so feel free to participate in this conversation. I think it is timely, though, that we're getting together for this conversation at the moment. There's a lot of signs that gold and silver, in my opinion, are potentially right around the corner from a significant breakout. Of course, nobody can time the markets perfectly. If they could, or if I could, I wouldn't be running a YouTube channel. I'd be, a billionaire, of course, if I could time markets perfectly. But there's a lot we can talk about today. I mean, I think there's a lot of factors out there which could contribute to a significant appreciation in the price of gold and silver. And, if there's anything you want to kind of dig into to kick things off, let me know. Anybody in the chat has any, topics they want us to dig into tonight? I'll be here for a little while with Constitutional Stacker. So, just let us know. I mean, there's certainly a lot of geopolitical topics at the moment, which could contribute to some significant price moves in the price of the precious metals. But, even if we weren't on the verge of World War III, if everything on that front was fine, there's a lot going on domestically and just in the global economy, which indicates that the precious metals will be having some significant moves in the very near future. Just my take on things.
Yeah, and let me ask you something. So I don't know. I mean, I think you started your channel, 6 years ago? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was about 2017. I'd have to go check the date on YouTube, but something like that.
I actually went and watched your first video and left a comment last night. I watched the birthing process. I like to do that, but I don't know how long you've been stacking. I've been stacking since 2008 or 2009. I'm 43. I started when I was 28 or 29. I can never remember which. And, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was like, oh, gold and silver, everyone talks about it, blah, blah, blah. I didn't understand what it was. And I think it was the best thing I ever did. It taught me how to save money. I was horrible with money. And I still like to spend money. I just like to spend money on money. You know what I mean? I'm not in the camp that metals are going to hit the moon. I'm in the camp of I want as much as I can get for the least amount possible, because at that point, I just don't feel I can lose. So either way, what's up, Tiger? Either way, I feel like it's going to be a win. I mean, whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, I'm still kind of right?
Well, so first question, I started stacking around the same time as you. I got started looking at gold and silver around 2008 for obvious reasons. A huge financial crisis can get you thinking. I didn't stack my first physical until I think it was 2010. So I had some mining stocks and some actually some ETFs prior to that. But yeah, I mean, gold and silver, they're not a get rich quick scheme. When I talk about the price going up in dollar terms, that's really more a statement on the value of the dollar than on the value of gold and silver. I think that they're a savings account in real money rather than in constantly devaluing fiat currency. So,
Fully
uh,
agree.
typically in a normal, healthy economy, I don't think that you would look at gold and silver as a way to gain significant appreciation and purchasing power. They would be a way to maintain it. But I am of a mind that we are at a confluence of events here which will actually lead to a increased purchasing power for those who are holding precious metals. And again, it's not really a get rich quick thing. The way I view it is more that everybody else who isn't holding metals is likely going to see a significant reduction in their wealth. So it's not so much that you're going to get rich; it's just you're going to avoid being impoverished.
I
Is kind of
love
how I
that.
look at it.
I always say the same thing. I said metals aren't going to keep you rich, but they're sure going to keep you from being poor. I mean, really. I mean, yeah. And for me, my end game, I don't know about you, because this is the first time we've really interacted off of, I mean, you do your live streams, I do my best to crack you up, and I've actually got you a couple times, which I love playing that game with you. I'm sure you've noticed. But I believe that my end game is physical assets, land, real estate, physical precious metal. But I use the markets to get there because, how else are we going to turn a significant amount of money unless we're very wealthy to begin with, or unless we make an extremely good amount of money and live very frugally. How else are we going to get there? So my end game, yes, I use the markets to get there. You brought up mining stocks. I have oil stocks. I use that. I take profits. I cash them out. And I turn it into real physical money. I don't know your strategy. We've never talked about that, but if you're willing to talk about that at all.
Yeah, sure. Well, sure. I do some speculation as well in the markets, and there's nothing wrong with that. I do view it more or less just as gambling in a paper casino, because the thing about the markets these days is, I mean, there's no real price discovery mechanism. The only thing that drives markets is the Federal Reserve, and it's been that way for a while, especially since the 2008 financial crisis, since the beginning of QE and debt monetization. So, there's nothing wrong with speculating in the casino as long as you acknowledge that that's what you're doing. But converting those paper profits into hard physical assets, I think that's a wise decision, because, at some point the music's going to stop. And I think that there's a lot of people who have probably a lot of profits on paper who are going to realize that those paper promises, are actually not something that they can rely on. I think that is very likely to be a realization, unfortunately, that a lot of people, to me, the best case scenario would be that the metals don't take off, right? That probably, for my own living standard, for everybody's living standard, I think it would actually be best if the metals don't take off, if they just resume, kind of their steady move up, if they move up slowly with inflation, as the dollar is slowly devalued, which has kind of been what we've witnessed for a long time. However, I do think there's a real possibility that we could see these markets, kind of fall apart, because what we're living through is an era of these massive paper bubbles that have been inflated by central banks around the world. And ultimately, the system that we have is unsustainable. And we're beginning to see signs of that, just in a lot of ways. But, the debt and the derivatives are a huge bubble that is destined to pop. And, we haven't really seen an event like that in living memory. And so, people tend not to really pay attention to warnings from history. But this type of event, it's not the sort of thing that has never occurred before. It's happened many times throughout history. The difference is this time the bubbles are larger than they have ever been. We live in an era of a digital financial world. The markets today, nobody even really knows how big the derivatives market is or what all these things represent. The levels of debt that have been accrued today are historically unprecedented. And as a result, I think the crash that's coming is likely to be unprecedented as well. Again, nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows what's coming for sure. But when I look at it and I just, apply some basic mathematics to things like the national debt, it's very concerning. It's very concerning. And I think that, we don't give financial advice. Of course, we live in a very litigious society, so we always have to give that disclaimer. But I would feel pretty unprepared right now if I didn't have any physical assets, the kind that, I don't have to rely on promises from other people, those counterparty promises. You don't have to rely on that to,
Right.
To have the value. The value is literally in your custody. It's in your hand. It doesn't rely on another person. It's just inherently valuable, the metals. And that's why, I think that right now, with the way things are shaping up, it's more important right now than ever before to hold precious metals and to be accumulating them.
It's so funny that you said that, because I actually put it in the disclaimer that we are not. I said we slash or I slash we are not financial advisors, so y'all can't sue us. No, I'm kidding, but yeah, that's always in every video. But it's funny you say that, because I couldn't agree with you more. I don't. There's this part of me that thinks we're going to be able to kick the can down the road forever because people are asleep, but then there's this part of me that says, okay, people are actually kind of starting to sort of maybe possibly wake up, in masses. And then there's this part of me that says, I don't really like participating in the markets because I don't inherently like what they stand for. And I'm telling you, I've gotten really, really good at making a profit in paper markets, but the markets don't make as much sense to me as they did a couple years ago. So it's really hard to peg that. And not a financial advisor, but wow, look at that $5 super chat. Thank you, Silver Chair. Dude, I appreciate you, brother. You're a good man, dude. Thank you so much. And if I had to pick one place to have my wealth, and make no mistake, I am a stacker at heart. The majority of my wealth is in physical assets, by far. And a lot of people like that 10% thing. For me, I'm talking about, I have about 70 or 80% of my wealth in physical assets. People will agree with that. They'll disagree with that. But if I had to pick one, and I don't believe in doing that, it would be physical assets, like metal. Metal and / real estate, if I had to pick one thing to do. I don't know your take on that, but that's where I feel comfortable. That's my comfort level. And that's not my advice. That's just, me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that any one rule of thumb applies to everybody in terms of how much wealth they want to hold in precious metals. And certainly, as I've said, there's no way to know exactly what's around the corner, but some things are obvious, and that is that the dollar, the game plan in the long term for the dollar and all fiat currencies to devalue them in the long term, right? So it makes sense to hold real things, real physical assets that don't decline in value over time the way currency does. And certainly, if you look between 2011 and now, gold and silver have underperformed paper assets significantly, but past performance is not always indicative of where things are going to go. So that's not guaranteed to repeat. And I think what we have seen is, massive bubbles being inflated by easy monetary policy. And so, more than 10% allocation to physical metals. Well, I'd have to look at some spreadsheets to tell you exactly what my allocation is, but it is well in excess of 10%. I can tell you that much. And I think it's important to be diversified. I do think it's a good idea.
I'm laughing because I'm sorry. I can relate. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm in the same boat, buddy. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, actually. As much as I dislike, fiat currency, I think it's a good idea to hold some cash right now. I do think it's wise to hold some cash. I mean, at least you can get a bit of a yield on it right now. Unlike the past, decade plus, you can get a high yield savings account and be earning more than 4.3% or 4.5%, depending on where you park your money in a money market account or high yield savings account. So, again, not financial advice or anything.
I'm making 6%. I'm just going to put this out there. They don't do affiliate links. I've asked them, but I've been with Worthy Bonds, Worthy Peer Capital for years, and I've never lost a penny. And right now they're paying 6% until February, and then it goes back down to 5.5%. I mean, you're not going to get that in a savings account. And I'm not financial advice. They're not paying me, but I've been with them for a long time, and I've never lost a dime. So inflation's high. I think inflation's probably 15% plus, but if I can make 6%, that's $60 for every $1,000 invested. Why not?
Yeah, it's a lot better than just losing 15% or whatever the real inflation number is. Of course, that's anybody's guess. I do think that it's certainly a lot higher than the CPI states, and it's heading higher. That's one of the trends that we're witnessing that is a bit scary, is that inflation has begun to tick back up. The Fed, they've been cranking up rates, but we're still seeing inflation moving higher. And I think it's probably a pretty good rule of thumb. If you want to know what the real rate of inflation is, you can just double the CPI, and that gives you a conservative estimate. Likely that might still be undershooting it a little bit, but I think it's much, much closer than what the official numbers say.
Now, are you saying government lies to us? No way. Tiger, thank you very much for that super chat. Chef, you're my dude. I got something coming for you too, brother. I'm going to send you something for the cookies. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I do like to pay attention. What's up, Elite? Yeah, they never tell us the full truth, do they? Ever, it seems like. With inflationary numbers and CPI and all that, it's just and I think people listen to it, but I don't think they're listening to it as much. Hey, Nick's Cranky, welcome in, everybody. I'm sorry, go ahead, because you touched on something I'm kind of old and I lose thoughts quickly, so I wanted to. What's up, Skywalker?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, man. I'm in the same boat, especially in these just kind of stream of consciousness conversations. So feel free to interrupt at any moment if you hear something you want to touch on that I'm rambling on about here. I've got some numbers here actually from today, an announcement from the Treasury that I thought we could kind of go over. So
I'd love to. At least you're prepared. I've been working all day, man. It's a good job. I knew I could count on you, bro.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
So we got an announcement from the U.S. Department of the Treasury today. The press release is Treasury announces marketable borrowing estimates. And so they're telling us how much they anticipate borrowing. So for the October to December 2023 quarter, which is the quarter that we are in the midst of right now, the Treasury tells us that they expect to borrow $776 billion. Now, they kind of put this in a rosy frame here. Like, as you say, not always giving us the entire truth, or at least spinning this. So on the next line, after they tell us that, they say that the borrowing estimate of $776 billion for this quarter is $76 billion lower than what they were estimating back in July. And they say this is due to projections of higher receipts. But what they don't tell you is that $776 billion is still the highest quarter four record borrowing in history. So the previous quarter four high was in 2021, and that was during a lot of the pandemic outlays for stimulus and that sort of thing. So that's something we just got. So record debt. We just wrapped up the July to September quarter, in which the borrowing was over $1 trillion in one quarter. $1.01 trillion were borrowed in quarter three, which is also a record. Now, it's not the highest quarter on record. It's the highest quarter three. The highest quarter on record was back in 2020 when they ran about a $3 trillion deficit in Q2 of 2020. But I suspect that we will probably be taking that out very soon. They also gave us the number for Q1 2024. So next year, January through March, they anticipate borrowing $816 billion, which again will be a record for a quarter one. But we see, let's see, someone put in the chat something about a war economy. And
that was Skywalker, and my brain's going 10 different directions because Nick's wants to know what percent we're paying on that interest on that debt, which is a great question. You dropped something in one of your videos the other day, and I broke down some numbers. I don't know if you caught it because you have so much traffic on your channel, but I was like, you broke down the amount of interest we're paying on a bunch of debt, and I was like, well, if you think about it, there's 1,000 thousands in a million, 1,000 millions in a billion, 1,000 billions in a trillion, and it's just astronomical. The amount of debt we're paying, or the amount of interest we're paying just on the debt, just the interest.
It's going to exceed $1 trillion very soon, and it'll eventually, assuming this whole thing doesn't collapse, we will see the interest on the national debt become the single largest item on the federal budget. The thing about the debt and the interest rates is, first of all, the debt is exploding just exponentially now. And it's happening at a time.
We just print it, though. There's nothing behind it. So who cares, right? So it's the party in the USA, man.
Well, yeah, ultimately we can print it. But the problem with that is that, they're going to have to print it probably to control interest rates. But in the past, in 2008, when they started the QE, and even in 2020, when they started QE Infinity, inflation wasn't really a problem yet. Inflation was, now certainly it was higher than they were reporting, but the inflation, now in one way it was inflation because it was expanding the money supply. The Fed was buying treasuries from the Treasury Department. They were buying bonds. That was expanding the money supply. That was inflation in the true sense of the word, that it's an expansion of the money supply, but we weren't seeing price inflation yet. Now we did see that inflation in assets. We saw, stocks go on a huge rip. So that was inflation of asset prices. And also in real estate, we saw that, but we didn't see consumer prices moving higher, the price inflation. But now that is not the case, right? I mean, anybody who goes shopping, goes out to a restaurant, tries to buy a car, fill up your gas tank, it's very apparent now to people that inflation is a real problem, something that people weren't paying attention to before. And so I think that when they go to print money this time, they're kind of stuck. They can't really do it until they get inflation back down, the price inflation, that is. It gets confusing because people, want to use different definitions for the word inflation. But, the price inflation is still very high, and it's not likely to come down anytime soon. And so printing it this time around will be a much bigger problem than it was the past time, last time around.
Well, it's funny. What's up, my brother Savage? Well, dude, Savage is my dude, man. That's my brother from another mother. Oh, man, I'm going so many different directions because obviously I was being sarcastic when I was like, oh, let's print it away. No problem. That's the government's mentality. And if you look back to, let's talk about World War II, right? People were sending their gold over, to buy goods and services on boats so that they wouldn't lose their gold in transit. And it's interesting because back when the world was on a gold standard, people had and governments included, had the understanding that we can't print this to oblivion until they abuse the privilege. And now government's like, oh, we'll print it, we'll fund it, blah, blah, blah. And it's just, when does that stop? When do people realize that, war was never good for the economy unless you weren't in it. If you were supplying nations, what's up, Nickel? If you were supplying nations with munitions and mechanics to fix their equipment and clothing and food and MREs, all that, it was good business to fund the countries fighting the wars. Now, because they just print it recklessly, they can pump up markets with war. I mean, when does it end? I wonder. It's so just too. I once heard somebody say, if you want to, what's up, Craig? I once heard someone say, if you want to fix the quality of a society, fix the money. And I think that's very, very true. Our money is broken.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the reason that central banks and governments don't like sound money like gold and silver, because it constrains them. And I mean, the real problem that we're facing right now is too much government spending, the entitlements. And, I'm sure some people will be triggered by this, but when I call Social Security an entitlement, the entitlements, including Social Security, Medicare, benefits, and, sadly, veterans benefits, all that stuff, you lump it all together and it's over $200 trillion. And, it's unpayable except in devalued currency. And so, the government promises voters everything, promise them the world to, buy votes. And the problem is that, they've also at the same time destroyed the educational system and propagandized everybody. So nobody is really aware of the problems of fiat currency and, free market economics. Everybody thinks that, I can remember taking an economics class back in high school a long time ago, and it was like just a propaganda course telling you how great the Federal Reserve is. That's all they teach you in economics.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at S&C, Silver and Cigars. He goes, I'm triggered. He's a buddy. We talk on the phone all the time. He's being sarcastic. That cracked me up. And now, and you're right, because the biggest reason, in my opinion, that things like Social Security are entitlements is because they're giving it to people who've never contributed to the system. And that might trigger some folks, but it's the reality. That makes it an entitlement on top of an entitlement, really.
Well, if you look up the definition of entitlement program, I just want to address this real quick. I try to do this as much as possible. If you look up the definition of an entitlement program, it has nothing to do with whether you paid into the program or not, right? An entitlement just means you're entitled to something. It could be you're entitled to it because you've paid into a program. It could be you're entitled to it because a bunch of guys in a room signed a bill that said that was the case. But it just, like, if you think that you are supposed to receive something from the government, it's an entitlement. It doesn't. I'm not trying to lump it together with program. People might take they might take
that's a great point.
Lumped together with welfare or food assistance or any of these things. But all that entitlement means is it's just something you're entitled to, right? The reasoning has nothing to do with it. And at this point, the government has promised way more than they can deliver to just about everybody. And the problem is that, everybody wants their pet program that they receive benefits from to be protected. And then, to hell with everything else. Everything else can get cut. But when everybody takes that approach, nothing ever gets cut. And that's how we get into these situations in the first place.
Well, and it's just like, let's rewind 3 years ago, right? Everyone wanted their stimulus check and all that. Nobody, well, not nobody, but the vast majority of people, they wanted their entitlement, like we talked about, even though they didn't have a choice to not go to work, really. And there's things we probably could have done, but that's a video and a topic for another day. But they wanted that, and a lot of people that get entitlements, on a regular basis, don't think about who's paying for it, what generations are going to suffer with the inflammatory results and consequence down the road, and that's very, very sad to me.
Well, we all pay for it, certainly future generations, but even now, the stuff that the government gives you for free is the most expensive stuff of all. And we're witnessing the cost of the stimulus right now in higher prices for everything. Because, it doesn't take a genius to understand this, that if you shut down the economy, everybody stops working, and then you give them money that you borrow, or AKA print. It hasn't been printed yet, but eventually it's going to be monetized. A lot of it was monetized during the pandemic crisis. They were running QE. They bought like $4 trillion worth of U.S. bonds, and then they send that money out to the people. Now, of course, the people don't get most of it. Most of it goes to military industrial complex, special interests. The stimulus checks are just like the anti-riot money that they distribute, so that, like, say, hey, listen, we're screwing everybody. Inflation's going to eventually go out of control, but at least, you get a check. And the sad thing is that most people are just so happy to get that because, the vast majority of people are completely clueless about how the economy works. And they think that the government has all this money somewhere that they can just distribute. But the thing is that the government is completely broke. They don't have any money. That's why they have to borrow this money to cover all these programs. But when you have the world reserve currency like we have, and you have, the world's biggest economy, and you're capable of exporting huge amounts of your debt in the form of, foreign nations buying US treasuries, and you have a central bank that can run the printing presses and monetize this debt, it appears free, but that is illusory. And
absolutely, because the government can't give anybody anything that they haven't taken from somebody else to begin with.
exactly. And, politically, it's very difficult for them to raise taxes and cover these programs. And so we end up paying for all of this stuff through the hidden tax of inflation. That is the politically expedient way to do it. And then, they inflate the money supply and prices go up. And then you have people like Jerome Powell who say things like, "Oh, now we understand how little we know about inflation," or that's paraphrasing the quote from the guy, but I mean, it's comical. They play dumb, like they don't know what's going on. But at the end of the day, the central banks, the Federal Reserve, central banks around the world, their goal is to devalue the currency. That's why the US dollar has lost like 98% of its purchasing power since 1913 when the Fed was created. And this is all a wealth transfer to the richest elements of society because they're the ones who really benefit from inflation. Inflation hurts the poor and the middle class because, the price of food goes up. I really feel it when I go to the grocery store, and you probably do too. But, if you're wealthy and you have a huge stock portfolio and you own a bunch of real estate, the percentage of your budget that, is accounted for by your grocery bill is like, inconsequential.
Absolutely.
The price of food could go up 10 times and you wouldn't even notice. But what they do notice is the asset price inflation, where all of this money flows into things like real estate and stocks. And so, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and they've got everybody convinced that they're doing this, for the poor and the middle class. But those are really the people who are getting screwed by this, gargantuan government and all of this spending that is being financed via inflation.
That is the age-old trick. That's how liberals get in power. Let's be honest, because they appeal to that genre of people. I don't know where you stand politically. I can only imagine. What's up, HVAC, dude? The Cranky Stacker asked you a great question directly. I have my thoughts on this, but I really want to hear your thoughts. And I do have to take a minute to go to the restroom, like literally a minute. Thank you, Christopher, for that. I appreciate that. Did you see that in the chat?
I did, yeah. So you take a break real quick,
question,
and I'll address that question. And politically, I guess I probably lean more conservative, probably more libertarian. But
imagine that in the stacking community. I'll be right back.
I will say that liberals don't have a monopoly on deficit spending. Let's put it that way. But let's see. Question was about vintage silver from the Cranky Stacker. Question for Smart Silver Stacker: is vintage silver worth the premium? I want to sell all my vintage and get more gold and some generic silver for more weight. Yeah, I would. I mean, look, I don't give advice, but I would say that selling collectible silver and rolling that over into low premium bullion is probably a good move. At least that would be something I would consider doing. The reason I like being familiar with vintage silver is so that, if you're out in the wild at the coin shop or the pawn shop or the yard sale or whatever, you can spot things that command a premium. Maybe you can pick them up at a discount. But yeah, I think that when the time comes when this collapse occurs that we're headed towards, more likely than not, what's going to really matter is going to be how many ounces of metal you have. It won't matter, what year your bar was minted or who the minter was. And I think when the price of the metal soars, those who will benefit the most will be the people who just have the most weight. It'll be the number of troy ounces you have, not so much, the individual units of bullion. So I like to stack all sorts of stuff, but it's very rare that I will pay a high premium for collectible stuff, unless it's just a really cool piece that I just like. I mean, I do have a little bit of a collector in me, but if you're sitting on a lot of like vintage silver that's worth, significantly higher than its melt value, unloading that and getting, generic bullion at a low premium sounds good to me. I wouldn't take any issue with that. I want to address something you said earlier. I've been taking some notes on what you were saying, Constitutional, and
because I want to touch on what you just said. Thank you, Savage, my brother.
One of the
Go
things
ahead,
you
I'm sorry.
mentioned was that, people seem to be starting to wake up. And I would kind of agree with that, except, the way I look at it is you're going to know when people wake up to what is happening because that's when it's going to be too late to buy gold and silver, right? I mean, gold is still what, around 2000 bucks. If you adjust it for inflation, it's still way below its all-time high from 1980. It's still way below the 2011 peak. I mean, silver, even in nominal terms, not even adjusting for inflation, but just in nominal terms, is less than half of its 1980 high. So, I don't think that people are really waking up in too much of a way. I think they're getting an idea that the debt is a problem. But, when people really wake up, it will be too late to get your hands on physical assets. I mean, that'll probably be the time possibly to unload some of your gold and silver when everybody wants it.
I agree.
And then that's when you're going to be able to pick up, assets that produce cash flow, real estate, businesses,
Yep.
shares of businesses. One thing, if you look at like the Dow to silver ratio or the Dow to gold ratio, between 2000 and 2011, gold, for example, actually outperformed stocks. Not
Oh
by a
yeah.
huge margin, but it did. I mean, it went from 250 bucks in 2000 to around $2,000. I think it almost touched 2000 in 2011, and since then, the metals have really underperformed stocks and paper assets. But I think that is going to change in a very big way when this collapse kicks off. And, I don't know what the event will be that kicks it off. I mean, we haven't even talked about geopolitics, but, there's a lot of things right now. Like, for example, if we see a large scale regional war break out in the Middle East, if we bomb Iranian oil infrastructure, or if Iran shuts down the Straits of Hormuz, or if you see Iranian-backed Shiite militias engaging with Israeli forces, I mean, you could see the price of gold and silver shoot up, and you could see that simultaneously a lot of paper assets declining in value, I think. With some exceptions, like energy stocks will probably do pretty well if they're producing energy in a geopolitically safe region. But, I think, Snapchat, Pinterest, and even some of these AI stocks, which are kind of in a bubble right now, could definitely decline in values significantly when this event occurs, whatever it might be. And it may not have anything to do with the Middle East, but that's just, one example. But things are poised right now, I think, for a big move.
Well, and I didn't catch all of what you said about the to Cranky's question. So there's, I'm doing something lately that I think some people think is nutty, and some people think makes a whole lot of sense. And I never stacked a lot of ASEs because I'm a generic bullion guy. I mean, I love Scottsdale. In fact, I put this out just for you. This is some Scottsdale action because I know you love Scottsdale.
I do. Nice.
I won't pay a lot of the premiums, but I do love Scottsdale. Same with ASEs. I don't love them. I like Scottsdale a whole lot more. But I realized what happened not long ago, 12 months ago, whatever it is. Somebody can hammer me and be like, no, it was this date. Where I'm at, and places like SD, I think, and APMEX, who I don't really do a lot with anymore because I'm cheap. But they were buying ASEs back for what, 38, 40 bucks, something like that for a while, because the mint dropped production as they've done before. And I was like, damn, if I would have had a bunch of ASEs, because I didn't, because I'm cheap and I buy, private mint. I was like, I would have dumped a lot of that and got a lot of free metal in the stack. So now, it's all based on your local markets and, and what people are willing to pay online. So I added 60 ASEs this month, which puts me at a total of probably 70, maybe 80, because I never stacked them. But I'm seeing market trends, and that's exactly why I'm doing that. I'm actually using that as an investment silver, if you will. And people hate that word when it comes to metal and gold, or silver and gold. But I'm using it to invest because I'm telling you, if and when that happens again, I'm going to offload them and get a whole lot of free metal in the stack, because I'm not obsessed with them. I think Americans are obsessed with them, and I'll take generic all day long. I like it. That's just my take. People think I'm nuts, but my LCS was paying a lot of money for them at one point.
Yeah, I think that there was an opportunity there back in March. I mean, the premiums on Silver Eagles were like almost 100%. So
insane. And I'm getting them for 27 to 29 right now, and I'm all about that for the
yeah,
next time around.
That's not bad. I mean, I have some American Silver Eagles. I did not unload any. I've never sold any physical silver. I just haven't done it.
I sold an ounce of gold once and about 300 or 300 or 400 ounces of silver once. I had an unexpected thing come up. It hurts. Don't do it. I don't recommend it. I think it sucked.
To me, trying to capitalize on rising premiums. I mean, if you have like monster boxes of Eagles stacked up somewhere, it might make sense. But there's nothing wrong with selling things when they have a high premium. And that's kind of what I said to Cranky to answer his question. My preference for stacking, I guess the term you use, like an investment silver or something, is actually constitutional silver. I've been stacking that recently. I've been picking up $half. And the reason that I like them,
I've added 4 ounces or 6 tubes of dimes this month for the same reason. Go ahead. I'm sorry, but yeah, same thing. I'm doing that for the same reason because the premiums. Same reason.
The premiums on junk silver, I think, will explode eventually. And
junk. Oh, he called me junk. You hear that? Ouch.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard habit to break. Constitutional is many more syllables than junk, so I still revert back to that nomenclature sometimes. It's just easier to say, but. Junk silver, constitutional silver, 90% silver, they haven't made it since 1964. And so to me, whereas the scarcity of American Silver Eagles is kind of like an artificial thing, because the mint could make more of them if it wanted to. It just doesn't because they don't prioritize it. And they're trying to, probably increase the amount of money they make from the seniorage or whatever, the difference that they charge between their input cost for silver and the finished product. But junk silver is truly a scarce thing. And the thing about junk silver is nobody really knows how much of it is out there. A lot of it has been melted down. And, a lot of that occurred in the 1980s when silver was spiking. A lot of people were enticed to sell their silver coins to refiners. I'm sure a lot of it was melted down in 2011 as well. And nobody knows for sure how much is still out there. I mean, a lot of it was minted, but again, that was like 6 decades ago. And so the supply is limited and shrinking. And the fact that you can still get it, I mean, the premiums really have come down, is a huge gift to us stackers. So it's one of my favorite things to stack. And I think that someday we're going to see the price explode. It was back in like maybe 2010 when I first started stacking. I remember I went to this local coin shop, because I always bought at a local coin shop when I started. And I remember the old guy who ran the place, he'd been running it for, forever. And he told me, he said, one of these days, these coins, the junk silver, each one of those coins is going to have a near numismatic premium attached to it. And I still think that he was correct. And we see that, in March. Well, yeah, see, you got the receipt, stacking constitutional right there at the local coin shop.
I went today. I bought another tube of dimes. I think that puts me at 6 once my orders show up for the month. And I'm literally stacking pretty much just ASEs and junk. I'll call myself junk because of the premium. The premiums have come down so much on both. So I think that's a good move right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've seen is whenever there's a major disruption in the markets, like we saw this in 2020 when we had that ridiculous collapse down to $12 an ounce or whatever in the paper markets. I believe, if I recall correctly, that at that time, constitutional silver, the premiums, went way up to compensate for that decline. Like nobody's selling their junk silver for $12 an ounce. There's just no way. And then in March, when the financial crisis kicked off, which we're still in the midst of, by the way, when that kicked off, we saw premiums exploding across the board. But junk silver, the premium shot up to like 60, 70%. And in many cases, you just couldn't get it. It just didn't exist. Like you'd go to every online dealer and they're just out of stock. Yep. So it becomes literally like the unobtainium.
And if you could get it, it costs you an arm, a leg, and a kidney.
Yeah, if you could even find it somewhere, you were going to be paying 60, 70% over spot price.
Yep.
And, I believe that one of these days we're going to see a move like that,
Yep.
probably when this big revaluation of the metals occurs. And
And I think the same thing's going to happen with ASEs. And I think what's up 365. I think it's a hell of a time to be stacking both. Personally,
I would tend to agree. I lean more towards the 90% silver. But yeah,
well,
ASEs too.
I agree with you. That's why I'm doing both, baby. I'm trying to spread myself across the markets. Hey, real quick, y'all are all of you are mods because no one's abused it. Everyone in here has a wrench. Drop your links. I mean, support each other. Go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to say that. Like, I don't get mad about that. Support each other. Shamelessly plug yourself. I don't care. You show each other the love.
Yeah, and guys, guys and gals, make sure you smash that like button and share this with your friends. And if you haven't seen my work, if you haven't seen my channel, just Google Smart Silver Stacker or search on YouTube for Smart Silver Stacker. You can see me on Twitter also at Stack Smarter. I am somewhat active on there. If you message me on there, I'll definitely reply.
I need to find your Twitter. I don't do much on there. I just plug myself on there. But no, yeah, absolutely. I've dropped your link about 6,000 times in this chat. But yeah, someone drop his link too if you would. I mean, you are a phenomenal genius in my opinion, and you are a gifted solo streamer. So definitely go by his channel and check him out. He's amazing.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And you've been doing a great job with your interviews and live streams lately as well. All right. So what have we touched on? We kind of talked about the financial situation, the debt. Jamie Dimon, he just announced that he's going to be selling about 1 million shares of his holdings in JP Morgan, something that he hasn't done in 18 years of running the show. That's a recent development. I think that's a kind of an ominous sign. And, the financial sector, I think, even absent everything that's happening in the Middle East and around the world, the U.S. financial sector is, ultimately in the middle of a huge meltdown. These major banks are largely insolvent. And this is another reason to be stacking physical gold and silver because, we saw a bunch of banks begin to fail in March. So far, the banks that have failed in 2023, the dollars on deposit there already exceed the dollars on deposit of every bank that failed in 2008. So, I think it gets kind of downplayed how serious this situation is. And now what we're beginning to see, we really haven't seen the other shoe drop here, but is the commercial real estate sector in the U.S. Post-COVID, the rents are declining tremendously in these office buildings. This is a huge problem for these banks who have a lot of exposure to this sector. So the banks are coming under pressure for a variety of reasons. They're sitting on a lot of bonds that have a low yield that they picked up in 2020, 2021, when rates were very low, artificially so. And now, as the Fed has been cranking up interest rates and also inflationary pressures have been pushing up the yield on U.S. treasuries, the value of those bonds on these banks' balance sheets have been declining tremendously, and they're all going to need a bailout. Now, when is that going to happen? It's hard to say, but I do find it a little suspicious that we seem to be on the verge of World War III, which would be a pretty good cover for the Fed to begin easing again right at the same time that the financial sector is on the verge of a major collapse. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but this is certainly something we need to be watching as stackers as well.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last sentence? I was typing I review. Thank you so much for that super chat. That's phenomenal. You all are amazing. I'm sorry, what was that? You asked about my thoughts on that last sentence.
Well, the fact that we seem to be on the verge of a major conflict here, and it just seems like kind of an odd coincidence that we may be about to go to war right at the same time that the financial system is on the verge of collapse and needs to be bailed out. But they need some kind of a cover for that.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because if you go throughout history, and I even trace this back to the Spanish flu. If you go back to 1918, there was a major change in the economic monetary system. And if you look at wars and conflicts, it is almost always, if not always, surrounded by changes in the monetary system. Exactly, I review. What a coincidence. And now I do think they will be able to kick the can down the road for a long time to a degree because people aren't waking up like they should. However, I also think those in the know, like, everyone in here, everyone who has physical assets, everyone who at least is on the fence of having physical assets will prevail and will survive better than anybody else. But I do think they will be able to kick the can down the road a whole lot longer than they would have 40, 50, 60 years ago. Because people are, we're all so busy, right? We all have lives. We're all trying to survive now. And the harder they make it to survive on a daily basis with prices. What's up, Matt? The more we are all compliant and we get in line and we go about our day and we make our profits. And even though the profits are less and buy us less, we're so consumed with that because we don't have a choice that less gets done over time. It's all by design, all of it. I really believe that.
Yeah, I don't know one way or the other how much by design it is. There are certainly some odd coincidences here and there, but you can look at things and you just have to kind of take the pieces of data that are provided to us and, do your own analysis and make judgments for yourself. But I think one thing that's for sure is there does seem to be a concerted effort. And it's not that there seems to be, there is, to devalue the dollar. Even the Fed tell us on the face, their mandate, of course, is price stability. But then they tell us that they have a target of devaluing the currency by 2% annually, right? So,
yep.
Right off the bat, that's not even a secret. So, that's a good reason to be in hard assets when they tell you right on the face of it, yep, we're trying to aim for 2% inflation. They're exceeding their goal quite handily at this point, but
yes, they are.
But that's not even a secret that their goal is to devalue the currency.
No, but see, it's kind of like look at the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, right? It's not taught in schools, just like economics. True economics is not taught in schools because it's a whole lot easier to take away your money and to take away your rights that you don't know you have in the first place. And that's exactly what's going on. People don't know what real true money is anymore, and they don't know. It's so much easier to devalue money when people don't know what it is. And I think it's really all by design. I really do, all of it.
Well, the devaluation, 100%. And you're right. You see these videos where people go out on the street, and I don't know who it is, Mark Dice, or a few people do this, but they'll say, here's a $20 bill or a silver bar, and everybody takes the cash. It's wild stuff. One of these days, I'm always hoping that one of these guys is going to come up to me and do that, and I'll say, "Oh, I'll take the silver." That'd be great.
There's another guy, and I love his work, and I'm sub to him. He's got a coin shop. He does the same thing, and every friggin' time people take the silver, and I'm like, or the chocolate, I'm like, you're out of your mind. Cranky Stacker says, I still can't believe Sal subbed me. Okay, so I think I had 60 subs, and I still remember the video. Old Uncle Sal, man, Salivate Metal. He commented on my video. It was about pumpers, and this was like in the first 3 months of the channel, and I'm like, nope, that's spam. That's WhatsApp. I click on the link, and it takes me to Let's Explore. I'm like, wow, that's really Sal. So Cranky, Sal's a good man. He is one hell of a supporter of the community. I've been watching that guy for years. So I know how you're feeling, man. I'm sorry, I had to touch on it. That's funny. It's just like when Triple S here sent me an email. Hey, you want to do a live stream? First of all, I felt like an asshole when I missed it because I am. And second of all, I'm like, you want to do a live stream with me? Really? So, Cranky, there are some phenomenal members of this community that don't have big heads because they've had success, and we are lucky to have them. And that's Sal, that's Triple S. There are some great channels out there. So I know how you're feeling, and it's a good thing, isn't it?
Well, listen, I'll say this. To anybody out there who is spreading information about sound money, I think we have an important task that we are undertaking, and the schools, as you say, are not going to do it. So
no, sir.
If you're worried about your sub count or any of that stuff, don't even look at that stuff. My suggestion would be to, educate yourself, read as many books as you can, find as many sources, watch videos, try to look at everything, and get as much information as you can, and then give your analysis on what's going on and try to educate people as much as possible, and just, make a lot of content. As far as YouTube goes,
Yep.
if you're concerned about your subs, stop looking at your subs and,
Yep.
write out your plan for your next 10 videos and then
Yep.
make them.
And you know what? Carry something with you, because I used to write down stuff, and I need to get back into this because I will have phenomenal ideas, then they will leave my brain and come back later. But also something else I would say, Savage told me this, and I didn't understand this at the time. He goes, look, bro, you're going to wake up one day, you're going to have a bunch of views on a video. I'm like, yeah, I'm not. And he was right. And it's going to happen for each and every one of you too, if you stay consistent. And like right now, I don't get the views I used to get, but guess what? It's a stock. It goes up, it goes down. I get more subs, but I get less views. Be very careful who you run with, because there are toxic people in the community and there are positive people in the community, and you will be judged on that. So, you need to surround yourself with the positive, informative members of the community who actually are here trying to make a difference, and you will grow. And the growth is different for everybody. I mean, some people grow overnight and then they stop. Some people grow slow, some people, and then they blow up. Like, it's different for all of us. So whatever you do, do not lose hope, because it's going to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, that's great advice. Like you said, I mean, you said you went and watched some of my videos from 6 years ago. And, when I first started this channel, I wasn't really planning on doing anything with it. I just like stacking silver. And I thought, yeah, sure, whatever. I'll talk about that a little bit. And, the more videos you make, the better they're going to get. And one of these days, if you just keep putting stuff out there, something's going to, catch in the algorithm, and it probably won't be the video that you expect.
So Silver Wolverine, I don't know if he's still in here, but he said the same thing. His most viewed video, do you know what it is by any chance?
I have no idea. Yeah.
It's duck eggs versus regular eggs. And his son went to Costco and accidentally bought duck eggs by mistake. And he's a stacking channel. He's a mint guy. I mean, and he puts out phenomenal information. That's his most viewed video. I think it's got 50 or 100,000+ views, or 200,000. I mean, and he's like, I never would have thought. So you're absolutely right. I have put out content that I think is the best I've ever done, and it's got 300 views. Then I put out stuff, I'm like, all right, I'll make this. And they got 20,000 views. I'm like, what? So yeah, it's so true, man. You can never tell.
There are videos I've spent, hours and hours working on and creating script for and all that stuff, and like nothing happens. And then you'll just have an idea someday for something you want to say, and you just sit down and record it real quick. And then that, I think, sometimes resonates more with people, but it's just, you never know. And who was it that did? Was it Wolverine? You said that did the egg thing. I mean, that might be a sign that you might want to start a spin-off channel about eggs or something. You might consider that.
But I will warn you, because I watched the whole thing, and I will warn you, once you watch it, you will get nothing but egg videos in your suggested videos for about 2 weeks. But
yeah, watch that one in incognito mode.
It's great. Yes. But he doesn't need the ad revenue on that one. He's already, watch that with your incognito, because you will get nothing but egg videos in your feed. But I mean, that video for him did phenomenal. And he's like, I never would have thought. I'm like, I get it, man. I get it. So you're absolutely right. And, it's really the same thing with investing. I mean, I bought, here's another plug. Okay. I'm not getting paid. I bought Novavax, NVAX in 2020. I'm like, okay. Well, 2019, I'm like, okay. Vax stocks do well. People want to get vaxxed. I'm not about it, but people are. I bought that at $3.43 a share. I sold it at $295 a share. I think I made 4,700%. I didn't have enough because I didn't know it was going to take off. I think I made 15, 20 grand, whatever. So here I am. I'm not rich. I'm not on my island, right? But you never know what's going to do well sometimes. And it's the same thing with YouTube. I mean, it's no different. YouTube investing. Now, you take precious metals. I think that's, you can pretty much, gauge that it's going to do well over time. Yes, I have XRP as well, broke stacker. And I'm not a crypto guy, but I do hold Bitcoin and XRP. Those are the only ones I hold. And some Shibu I can't get into, but that's another story. But you never know. So spread yourself out. Do the same thing with your videos. I mean, don't go, doing something totally different than stacking, but maybe once in a while throw something in the mix. I did a cooking video not long ago. It did terrible, but fried cheese is amazing, so I don't care. You never know.
Well, and to your point there about, not having put enough cash into that asset, the pharmaceutical stock that you purchased there. I think that that's going to be something that a lot of us in the future. Now, of course, again, nobody has a crystal ball, nobody knows for sure, but I think that a lot of us stackers will be looking back on these times right now, and one of our biggest regrets will be that we didn't stack more. Even in
Absolutely.
the recent pullback that we had in the price of gold and silver, I said it at the time in live streams and in videos, like, look, we're going to be kicking ourselves that we didn't take advantage of this drop. Sure, things can always drop further, but of course, that's not what happened. Gold went down to, I think, like 1830, and now it's back up to $2,000 in a very short period of time. And I believe that, even with the prices where they are, they've recovered from those lows. Silver is still really cheap right now. Gold is still really cheap right now. Silver,
Yep.
if you adjust the 1980 high for inflation, even just using the CPI, which understates inflation, the price back then in today's dollar was like over $200, and silver today is at 23. So, will there be a 4,700% return in silver? I have no idea. There's probably some, maybe of the riskier silver derivative assets, some of the miners and stuff like that, possibly, maybe even in the spot price, because remember, it's not about really the price of gold and silver going up. It's about the value of the dollar declining. And, how low can the dollar go? Well, the dollar is a fiat currency. The government that controls the printing of that currency owes $200 trillion in unfunded liabilities. So, you tell me how low the dollar can go. It's pretty low. And ultimately, it's not only that it can go low, but the dollar in its current fiat form with nothing backing it up. There is one number that all fiat currencies eventually drop to. It's zero.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. I am primarily a silver stacker. I think you probably are too.
Yeah.
I will say, and I have reasons for that. I personally, and I will always stack silver over gold. I find silver to be more aesthetically pleasing. I find silver to be far more useful to humanity. It does more. But despite that, gold doesn't do it for me. And my goal is to have so much silver, I need a warehouse. And we're slowly getting there. I'm going to have to get a third safe. And I just got a second safe a few months back. But it's true. But my thing, and I get, you want portable wealth in your pocket. I think gold is probably the better play overall because the world is obsessed with it. But I still prefer silver.
Well,
what about you?
I like both metals. From a storage standpoint, I certainly prefer gold. The thing that draws me to, the aesthetics of silver certainly are nice. You're not wrong about that, but I think the aesthetics of gold also are nice. There's something about both metals I think that humans, recognize as money and as treasure and as wealth. And sort of like, whether it's cultural or genetic or whatever, it's in humans' minds. That's the reason that when they took the silver out of the currency, they still kept it, looking like silver. They coated it with, nickel to make the copper tokens look like silver.
Nickel.
I believe that right now, silver is probably the most undervalued asset on the planet, or at least, it's on the short list. I would just look at the gold to silver ratio. Right now, people do like gold. So here's the thing about gold and silver. If you look at the gold to silver ratio chart, it moves up and down, right? If you look at the really long-term chart for hundreds of years, it was at a ratio of about 15-1. That's kind of an artificial thing because governments had things set up that way because they pegged the ratio. But the gold to silver ratio in the 20th century has oscillated between, I think the high was in 2020 when it hit about 113. And then in 1980, it got as low as 16 or 17 in January of 1980. It got very close to the traditional 15-1 ratio. But the thing about gold and silver is that in a gold and silver bear market, if you will, when there's not that much interest in the metals, the gold to silver ratio tends to be very high, and it is very high right now. And that's because people view gold as the more reliable safe haven asset store of value. Silver is viewed as more of a speculative asset, and rightly so, because it is a smaller market than gold. You know, gold is a huge market. It's very liquid. Central banks stack gold. It's a tier one monetary asset. It's a very, very large liquid market. You know, it's all the gold that's ever been mined more or less still exists. Silver is a very small market.
Yes, but then you got JP Morgan, who's silver heavy, and it kind of makes you wonder why. Because,
Indeed.
I mean, yeah.
And they're also the custodian of the SLV ETF.
Well, I was going to say, they spoof it like it's going out of style because they know something.
Absolutely. And the thing is about the gold to silver ratio is that when there is a lot of interest in the precious metals, people prefer silver, because when there's a lot of interest in the precious metals and there's a lot of speculation and a lot of money flowing into the metals, silver tends to be the metal that catches more of a bid, because there's more, it's the speculator's metal.
Well, and let's be honest, I mean, it's also more affordable to, you know, the common folks like us, you know, where, you know, I put almost 100 ounces of silver in the stack this month. You can't do that with gold. And there's something cool about holding a bunch. Thank you, iRev. I appreciate that. There's something special about the way silver sounds and what it does for us, and just, you know, having a bunch of it. I mean, you can look at that and be like, wow, I have something.
Yeah, and silver, you know, right now it's more of a speculative asset, I think. And when a lot of interest kicks off in the precious metals, I expect the gold to silver ratio to decline significantly. And when that time comes, I may opt to convert a lot of my silver into gold. But silver is the cheaper asset. And I mean, I think it's wise to buy things that are cheap, personally. I don't like to buy, you know, like when I go to the grocery store and I see things are buy one, get one free, I tend to just buy everything they have. I say, yeah, if I'm going to use it, you know, let me buy it.
I'm that way too.
Yeah, it's smart. You know, you buy things when they're cheap. I don't wait until the sales are over to load up on stuff.
Well, so I filled in. I played, you know, I'm an AM at work. I've been there 15 years, but I played GM for the guy that was on vacation because I got keys to multiple stores. And I had to go to the bank to get deposit slips for all 4 stores. And I was like, well, the guy goes, you want me to double up on the order? I'm like, why not? We supply them to all 4 stores. I mean, they're not going to go down in price, you know? Let's do it, you know? That's how I look at things. If I can get it, I work out with a guy all the time, and we eat a lot of beef. And I tell him, I'm like, listen, when you go to Walmart, that's where we do a lot of our shopping. I said, look, go and buy it when it's, you know, $4 a pound, and put it in your freezer. It's going to stay good for a long time, and you're going to eat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pounds a week. Yeah, but I don't want to spend that much money. I'm like, look, it's not going to go down in price. Buy it now while it's cheap and store it. Same thing with metal. I really believe that. I agree with you.
Yeah, and that's why I'm focusing on silver. It's not really because of any inherent love for silver that I have. I mean, you know, silver's cool, gold's cool. At the end of the day, I try to be as pragmatic and emotionless about these decisions as possible. And I think it's good to, you know, be diversified. There's a lot to be said for gold, and the fact that you can, you know, stick thousands of dollars worth of value in your pocket rather than, you know, walking around with a huge backpack full of silver, which is going to weigh you down. Sure. But silver is just so cheap right now. I mean, there's almost no other commodity that you can find that is at a lower price than it was at in 1980. I can't name one. There might be out there.
And you can't go wrong. I mean, if you pick one metal or the other, I mean, really, in the end, can you go wrong? I saw that OTG. That's funny. Can you really go wrong? I mean, really?
Yeah, holding physical metal, I think, is just a wise decision. I do believe that there will be outsized gains for silver moving forward, but, you know, I have a bit of both. Definitely heavy on the silver side, but again, if the gold to silver ratio were to collapse down to, say, 20 or 15, I would take the majority of my silver and roll it into gold, to the extent that I wasn't rolling it into other assets.
Absolutely. And when the ASCs pop again, I'm going to be doing a lot of that. I'm going to turn it into a lot of generics and a lot of gold. Now, I want to share a story with everybody. I mean, do you have a few more minutes? I don't know your time.
Yeah, a few more. I got to wrap this up probably in the next like 5-10, but I can stick around for a couple more minutes.
So I went to Harry's, and I am the first YouTuber to film there. Just putting that out there, and there's a reason I'm saying that. And one time I went in there and what did I do? Oh, I bought a 10th ounce of gold. And this really stuck with me. And I want you guys to pay attention to this because I want you to have the most metal you can. And he said, why are you buying 10th ounce or quarter ounce gold? I said, well, what if I have to barter? And he says, look, man, he goes, you come in here multiple times a week. You buy rounds, you buy bars of silver, you buy constitutional. He goes, aren't you using that for barter if it ever happens? And I thought, huh. He goes, why don't you save yourself some money and buy gold in half ounce or 1 ounce denominations? And that really made sense to me. And I really, a lot of guys, and look, if you can put a 10th of an ounce of gold in the stack and do that, because that's all you can afford before you'll blow the money, do that. But if you can discipline yourself to save up or discipline yourself to buy the silver and hold it to turn it into an ounce of gold, I really think that could be a smart play. That's just me. And I don't play the GSR a lot, but that stuck with me. He said, look, you got enough silver you can barter for the rest of your life. Why don't you buy gold and save yourself on the premium? I'm like, huh, that really resonated with me, and I never forgot that. That's why I'm not a huge fan of fractional gold. Honestly, I like half ounce, 1 ounce pieces, and I will buy a quarter ounce, but a 10th ounce, I'm not gonna pay the premium. I'm just not.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think quarter ounce at the very minimum, 1/10 ounce gold coins. I mean, unless you get them on sale or something, the premiums tend to just be too high. One thing I actually do like now, this is like going to trigger a bunch of people out there. One of the most contentious items for stackers is gold backs. I actually like gold backs. I don't know how familiar you are with those, but you can get them in 1/1000th ounce denominations. Now the premium, yeah, it's like 100% premium, but there's a lot of utility that comes along with that. And it's not like, the vast majority of my stack is held in gold backs, but I do hold some. And I think that from a barter standpoint, there's some utility there. And, just from a performance standpoint, anybody who is loading up on gold backs, in 2019, 2020, 2021, they've done quite well for themselves because the premiums with the gold backs, the nice thing about them is there's a very liquid market for gold backs. And yeah, you might have to pay $4 or $3.50 or whatever the cost is for a 1/1000th ounce gold back note. But when you go to sell it, you get that right back. So I don't know. I like gold backs personally. I agree. I'm not a big fan of 1/10 ounce gold, though. I tend to agree with you on that.
I was a gold back hater, and I actually think, now that you said that, I think it was in your stream. Either you or somebody else pointed out to me, they're like, look, gold backs are pretty cheap, and they're a great way. I mean, I would not stack them. I wouldn't stack anything, as a solitary purpose. I mean, be diversified. But someone said, look, I use these to tip people and educate them about real money. I'm like, that is phenomenal. And that completely changed my perspective about gold backs. I mean, if I can buy a gold back and tip a server with a gold back in cash and be like, look, this is gold, it's real money, and educate them, that's a win, man. I mean, I think that's a phenomenal use for a gold back.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of utility behind them. I've got an interview on my channel with Jeremy Corden, the Goldback CEO. So if anybody wants to hear his take on that, when this live stream's over, you can check that out on my channel. Just look for a Goldback on Smart Silver Stacker, and it should pop up. It's a image of him on the thumbnail and everything. But he makes a pretty compelling case for them. And I mean, obviously he's biased, it's his company, but I like them sort of as a niche product. Like most of my gold is not held that way. I think the best way to stack gold, if you're just, getting started, focus on like 1 ounce gold bars or half ounce gold bars, generic, or, maybe American gold eagles. But there is definitely a place for gold backs. And, one thing I was doing for a while is like when I would order, I buy most of my gold and silver from SD Bullion. They're my channel sponsor, and I do primarily shop with them. But I would like just add a few on to my orders because they're only a couple bucks. And if you want to, if you're buying $400 or $500 worth of silver, want to get a little gold, or maybe you're getting $400 worth of silver and you need to like hit a minimum or something like that for free shipping or whatever, whoever you're shopping with, you can add a couple of gold backs to the cart. And they're nice for, like, as you say, tipping. They make nice gifts. You can put them in a Christmas card or whatever. And they're cool. Like they're beautiful pieces of art. They're serialized pieces of gold. So they're just an interesting kind of niche product, but I think that there is a lot to be said for them.
Well, it has been an absolute honor to have you on here. Before, once I close the stream, don't go away. There's a couple things I want to say to you, in the studio. If you have like a minute and a half,
yeah, sure.
So just don't click any buttons. Do you have anything else you want to say before we close it out? I mean, this has been an honor. Go show Triple S some love. He is a friggin' genius. JDO, thank you. Generic Stacker, I saw you come in. KJ, I didn't have the time to address you guys, but thank you so much. PM.
I want to say one thing. Yeah, I am really appreciate you having me on, Constitutional Stacker. We'll have to make this like a semi-regular thing. You have a great audience here on your live stream, so I really appreciate you having me on. This is someone here saying, I catch some flack for having channel sponsors like SD Bullion, for example. And I see someone saying, they don't have the lowest prices. And I will say, look, I mean, there's no dealer out there, and this is a good reason to shop around, right? There's no dealer out there that is always going to have the lowest price, whether it be your local coin shop or SD or, any of the other online dealers. But I will say this, SD Bullion frequently has really good sales. It's not like I just go to their site and buy random stuff, with like, whoa, whatever the premium is. No, you wait until there's a good deal on some form of silver, whether it be like I bought some $50 from them when the pullback occurred, and I paid, I think, $17.50 per $1 face, which I thought was a great deal. And you want to shop around, and it's like no dealer. Don't be too wedded to one place. Like, don't just be wedded to your local coin shop. Like, oh, I want to support, local business. That's great and everything. But look, silver and gold are commodities. So, shop around and find the places with the lowest deals. And everything that SD Bullion, for example, sells, it's not always like they don't have always the lowest premium on every single item, but frequently they'll have, good sales on one or two types of bullion. And I tend to just focus on that. And my stacking is guided more by like where I can find the deals and what items I can find the deals on. Like, I know you mentioned Scottsdale silver. I like them. Most of my Scottsdale silver stuff that I have, I stacked like, 6-7 years ago. And it was because at that time they were frequently having these like very low premium sales. And so I just focused on that for a while because they were always having good sales. So,
and I can buy a 10-ounce APMEX bar, which I think I love. I mean, they're sexy. I can buy it second hand at my LCS cheaper than I can from them. So
yeah, exactly. So do that all day, 100%.
And one thing about SD, I did do 6-7 months ago. I did a 40% challenge, because I like 40%. I mean, I think there's a place for it, and I got all of it with the exception of a little bit from SD Bullion. I got a little bit from my LCS. I will say SD has kind of gotten a little bit JM and APMEX in their prices. Don't get me wrong. And I think Mark is his name, always ignores me in the live chat, so I don't pop in there anymore. And I've given them a lot of money, but they do have really good deals, and their customer service is really on point. So, they do have good deals from time to time. I mean, and that whole $500 minimum that fired people up, look, I get it. They were busy. They had to make a choice. So I understand why they did it. I've done a lot of business with SD. I typically use Bold, Hero, or Monument. But you know what? If SD has a deal, well, I'll use them. They have good customer service. They do. And sometimes they have great deals. I mean, and they've just, y'all got to understand, they have grown, so their prices are a little higher on a lot of things, but that also gives them the ability to have better sales than a lot of places at times too. So don't sleep on them. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, look around. I mean, again, they're commodities, so shop around. That's never a bad thing to do. And, to your point there, I know we're running on and on here, but I could talk about silver all day, of course.
Me too, and I'd love to. Anytime you want to, man, I'm in.
That $500 minimum, everybody got all fired up about that in March.
Yes,
SD Bullion had to implement a $500 minimum because they couldn't process all the orders. And, I talked to them, and they told me what it was. They were getting a lot of volume, but also in March, what was happening is they were getting orders that were like, $1 million worth of silver, $500,000 worth of silver. And an order like that, it takes a little while to pack up. So,
and that's a lot of overhead and a lot of labor. I mean, I do the P&L stuff every week, for my restaurant that I run. And I mean, it adds up. You got to pay people to come in to do that. There's overhead, there's labor. I mean, it's a thing. So I never had an issue with them for that.
The
ever.
real lesson we can take away from what happened in March there with that order is like, don't wait until the banks are collapsing to buy your gold and silver. Don't wait until everybody is piling in, because it really is too late. And we got a little preview in March of what the physical metals markets are likely to look like when, the shizzy really hits the fizzy here coming down the line, which, I think we are approaching at a rapid pace. But that's all I really got for you today, folks. I do appreciate you having me on, Constitutional. We'll do it again sometime. And just check out my channel, guys. If you haven't been over there, guys and gals, as Smart Silver Stacker. And hopefully I'll be here talking to you again with Constitutional Stacker sometime soon in the future.
I would love it, man. You got a phenomenal channel, and I've been watching you for years, just not under this channel name. So with that, I appreciate everybody in the chat, all the super chats, all your time, because time is your number one asset. Go check out Triple S. Go check out each other. We only benefit by listening and interacting with each other. We can all learn, different perspectives from each other. And, sometimes it may not make sense today, but it might tomorrow. That being said, thank you so much for coming on. And don't go away. I want to talk to you for 1 minute after we end the stream, and keep stacking.